Hey folks, today I'm sharing another recipe video for yet another 100% spelt sourdough whole grain bread. I'm sharing this one because out of all the 100% spelt recipes that I've made, I think this is my favorite. And this method that I'll show in this video is a method that I've been using for a lot of our breads lately, particularly just wheat and spelt. Anything that has the potential to have good gluten development works really well with this method. In typical Ellie style, it's really easy. I just use old starter out of the fridge. There's nothing too fancy about it. As you can see, I got an explosive oven spring on this bread. I scored it, which I don't normally do, but yeah, it's a really great way to make this bread. It looks a little bit like the Eye of Sauron, I thought. Maybe I'm just mad. Anyway, hope you enjoy the recipe. Please ask me questions if you've got any, and yeah, enjoy. This recipe uses 500 grams of whole spelt flour. I'm milling mine from the whole grain, but you can use spelt flour from the store if you want. Just make sure it's whole flour, probably stone milled is the best one to go with, and unsifted if you want a true whole grain spelt sourdough bread. While I'm milling my grain, you can see I'm measuring out my first water portion, which is 375 grams of water, and also the starter. I used about 130 grams, but anywhere between 100 and 150 is okay. I just measure those out while I'm waiting for the flour to mill. And once that's done, I'm mixing the starter into the water just to dissolve that really well and make sure it's fully distributed in the water, and then we're just going to dump that into the flour and mix those three together. So at the beginning it's just the flour, the water and the starter, no salt at this point. And what this does, this is like an hortalice kind of a initial soaking phase, and it really helps the bran and the gluten in the flour to hydrate really fully, and you get a much nicer texture in your bread. So just mix it through until no dry flour remains. And I like to scrape down the sides of my bowl as well with my spatula, but you don't have to do that. Give it a little bit of a fold, make sure there's no dry flour underneath. And then I cover that initial dough mixture, cover that and let it to sit and hortalice for an hour. Half an hour is okay, longer than an hour is okay, but round about an hour is what I usually do. And while I'm waiting for that hour, I get my second water portion and my salt ready. So I'm dissolving 9 grams of salt into 50 grams of water and get those ready. And we're going to add that to that rested dough in an hour's time. And that's an easy way to incorporate the salt, and it adds a little bit more hydration to the dough as well, which also gives it a great texture. So it's 2 p.m. now. Thought I'd give you the timeline so you can follow what I'm doing. I'm adding that salty water to the dough, and you just want to gently mix that through. So it's really easy because it's so wet, nothing really sticks to you. You just fold the dough on itself and sort of squish it. Just keep folding and squishing until all of the salt water is incorporated. Try not to tear the dough. So you can see this dough has got a beautiful soft suppleness to it. That is a sign that the gluten bonds have developed really nicely, and it's all nice and hydrated and soft and smooth. But you don't want to tear them. So you just fold and push and fold and push. Just take it bit by bit. Spelt flour is very extensible, so it stretches really easily. And you can see it's starting to get sticky now. When it starts to get sticky and a bit tacky, that's when you know the salt is mixed through properly. So once you've got to that point, cover it up again, rest it for another 30 minutes, and then after that we're just going to do a few more stretch and folds over the next couple of hours before we shape it. So this is the first stretch and fold. You can see how floppy and extensible that dough is. it will just stretch so much. So it needs some folds to bring some strength into it. But again, don't tear the dough, just pull it till you feel it resist and then fold it over. So that's the first one. Then I did a second one about half an hour later. You can see the dough is slightly different textured again. It's getting a little bit stronger, a bit more structure to it. And then I did do, I think, 1 or 2 more, but this is the dough at 4:30, so a couple of hours, 2.5 hours later. Can you hear the bubbles? I don't know if you could hear that, but that I tried to elevate the audio for that section. When you can hear that crackling sound, that's when you know your dough is getting a bit gassy. So I decide to shape this now because we're going to do the final proof for this bread in the fridge. So you don't want to overdo that first fermentation if you're going to fridge proof your dough. Otherwise it can over ferment and you'll have problems. So you just want to take it to the point, just a couple of hours, just enough to get a little bit of fermentation going there and for it to get a bit gassy. And listen out for those bubbles. And then I'm just rolling it up to shape it for the tin. So I just roll it one way. There's not a really special technique here. And then if I feel like it's still a little bit slack and it could go for a bit more rolling, I turn it the other way and roll it the other way. So I've done sort of 2 rolls there in different directions, and that brings it together nicely for the tin. So there's my tin. It's about a 1 litre tin. It's a small tin. I'll put the dimensions in the recipe. All of the full details for this recipe will be on my website too. And I just put it in this plastic container, which I use to keep my dough in the fridge. So I put it in the fridge. So it's probably, 4:35 in the afternoon. Put that in the fridge overnight, and I'm going to bake this dough the next morning. You can leave it for up to 36 hours or even a bit longer, depending on how much it was fermented in the bowl, what the dough temperature is like, and what the fridge temperature is like as well. You'll really just have to experiment with your bread and see how it goes. So this is the next morning. You can see the time on the microwave, 8:54 a.m. So I left this one for about 17 hours. I'm just going to get my oven ready. The dough is still in the fridge. You want to leave it in the fridge to the last minute. I preheat my oven to 210 Celsius, that's 410 Fahrenheit, and I put it on the Supercook fan forced setting. And once the oven is preheated, take the bread or the dough straight out of the fridge and it goes straight into the oven. It doesn't look like it's really well proofed. It's not kind of risen up and puffy like a normal room temperature proof dough is, but trust me, this is a happy dough. It's going to burst up really well. I did spray it with a bit of water, and as an afterthought, I decided to score it as well. I don't generally bother with scoring my doughs. I just let them open up as they please. But I had a feeling this one might have a good oven spring, so I thought I'd help it along with a score. And here's my hot pot that has been preheated with the oven. The bread just goes into there, or the dough I should say. It's not bread yet. Now, my style of baking, I love to cover up my loaves, all of them, whether they're in a tin or free form, and I use my roaster here. And I leave it covered the whole time. It gives really good steam around the loaf and it works out well. So if you're going to do that, 60 minutes is a good baking time. But if you're baking it uncovered, you might want to bake for a bit shorter. And here it is after 50 minutes. I was pretty impressed with that. It did get a really massive oven spring, which tells me I could have left it in the fridge a bit longer to let it proof a bit longer. But I was really happy with that. I just put it in again for that final 10 minutes. Normally I just leave it for the full 60 minutes, but I wanted to test it a bit earlier because it was for the video. And here it is, after 60 minutes covered baking at 210 Celsius or 410 Fahrenheit. We've got a lovely loaf of bread. Just give it a little bit of a tap to loosen it from the tin. Make sure you grease your tin really well as well. I didn't show that, but my tin was very thoroughly greased with my pan release mixture recipe. And here is the bread. It's just beautiful. We use this method a lot for our kind of wheat or spelt based breads. You can mix in other flours. This method is pretty forgiving. Gets a really good texture for not too much fuss and effort, and it's pretty flexible with timing as well. Yum, yum, yum. Such good bread. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found that helpful. If you'd like to support the channel and the work that I'm doing on Ellie's Everyday, please head to my Buy Me a Coffee page, buymeacoffee.com/ElliesEveryday. You can also book in to have a Zoom session with me if you want to. A lot of people on my soap making channel, more people on my soap making channel are taking up that offer, but it's open to anyone if they want to have a catch up and work through any issues with their sourdough bread. I'll see if I can help. Anyway, it's all there. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next video.